Hello everyone. I know I haven't done a video in a little while. There's been, of course, a lot going on, and I'd really like to talk about what happened on the 6th. Well, let's get into it. What you see here is something that I never ever thought I'd see in this country. And it's not just the gathering. I've seen that, before. I'm talking about the noose and gallows. This is definitely something I never ever thought I would see in my country. This I'm sorry, I'm befounded. This image here, this image blurred out a certain section of this for obvious reasons. I don't understand. And let me explain to you why I don't understand. I don't understand because I've voted in my lifetime 3 different ways. First, by punch card. Now, the problem with punch cards is what's termed a hanging chad. Hanging chad is when the plunger doesn't completely penetrate the perforated paper, and so you end up with it just hanging there, not a complete good tear to indicate how you voted. Second way, of course, was electronic. Now, electronic, once I was done selecting, how I was voting, there was a printer right beside the voting machine. Well, the computer, really. And it printed out, the first page. This is yes. This is correct. Yes. Another page printed. Okay, that's all correct. Is this correct? Yes. Yeah. Third page. Everything's right. Yes. And then the paper ran forward again until it was clear. Just blank paper. That protects my privacy. When I'm voting, it's nobody's business but mine and the Board of Elections as to who I voted for. Nobody's. Nobody gets to see my ballot but an employee that works at the Board of Elections. And if even they get to see it because they probably just feed it into a machine and it gets scanned. So it's, not their business either. That's my privacy as a citizen of the United States of America. Rudy Giuliani thinks he has the right to contest how I voted, how 155 million people voted. No, Rudy, you don't get to see the votes. You don't. It's not your business. It's not. I have a Fifth Amendment right with the government. You don't have a Fifth Amendment right as soon as you walk out the door or you go on the internet. You just don't. But also my point of this is, if I ever thought or felt like there was fraud happening, I would begin to ask questions. I would go to my Board of Elections and ask questions about the process. Why do they do this procedure or that procedure? Well, let me expand on one thing. When I voted early, when I was done with my ballot, I put it in a big envelope. I sealed it, filled out the front, handed it to the poll worker. I asked her, did I do everything on the outside correctly? She looked, yeah, good to go. The point that I'm making is yeah, there's no folds. It's put in a long manila envelope. So when they went to count my vote, there would be no folds in it because I didn't vote by mail. Now this year, I did take advantage of the opportunity of voting by mail. I did a video on it. Let me give you a real quick overview. They sent me an application for an absentee ballot. I filled it out. I sent it back. 2 weeks later, I received my ballot. I filled it out, put it on, folded it, put it on in the envelope, put that into the other envelope, sent it back. Where's the fraud? Now, if you look up here, where it's highlighted in gray, as of July 2020, there are 5 states: Colorado, Hawaii, Oregon, Utah, and Washington that hold elections almost entirely by mail. In other words, in these states, there really is no in-person voting. That's not a real option. Everyone in our military who's on active duty on foreign soil votes by mail. They don't have a different option. They obviously still have a right to vote. That's not taken away from them just because they're deployed. Is that full of fraud? Because that's the only way these people vote. Military contractors, again, on foreign soil, or that work in an embassy. Ambassadors, all vote by mail. That's nothing new. It is absolutely nothing new. But it's fraught with fraud? No. Was it fraught with, was the 2016 election fraught with fraud? Because there was, not like it was this time, but there was a good percentage of people that voted by mail. The Board of Elections knows who I am. They've verified my identity already. They already know who I am. Regardless if I vote here at my desk, at a polling place, or at the Board of Elections, what does it matter? They can absolutely identify who I am. And by the way, my state didn't go for Biden. So should my state be investigated for all this type of fraud going on? It's funny. The only states, the 5 states that they're contesting are Democrat. But they always haven't been Republican states. They always haven't been Democrat states. My state hasn't always been a Republican state. It's been a Democrat state before. 155 some odd million of us voted. That's our constitutional right. I'm not going to deny my experience that I don't see how the way I voted by mail, early, or in person was fraudulent in any way, shape, or form. I don't see how anyone could get away with fraudulent voting without it being caught. Well, there's lots of irregularities. You know what an irregularity means? Irregularity means a mistake. Somebody forgot to sign their envelope. They didn't put the date where it was supposed to be. They printed where they were supposed to sign. They signed where they were supposed to print. There's a smudge on the ballot. There's many types of reasons that are not fraudulent for irregularities. And it does make sense that there's more irregularities because more people voted by mail and maybe people didn't pay attention like they should have and simply read the instructions. But as long as there's enough time, ahead of the elections, shouldn't they have an opportunity to correct a mistake? Well, yeah, I mean, you can make a mistake even in person. Should your vote be tossed out because you didn't vote? Maybe you didn't vote for a corner. Maybe that was your intention. You know what? That's a voting irregularity, and they should throw out your ballot because you didn't vote for corner. Maybe you didn't want to. That is perfectly legal, and they can still legally process your ballot. That's not voting fraud, but it is an irregularity. In our country, the states run their own elections. The federal government has very, very little say in how the states run their elections. And that's the way it's all long before I was born. And if you can't tell, I'm not a young person. Do you want that changed at the federal level? Because that would involve changing the Constitution. And so that's not going to happen overnight. And really, would you want that change, that the federal government would have an influence on the voting laws of the states? I wouldn't. And I'm just not talking about, because the government's primarily Democrat. I wouldn't want that when our government was primarily Republican either. And in fact, Congress needs right now to take back a lot of the authorities that it gave to the president. They should have done that long ago, but they haven't. They should have done it during the Obama administration. And I'm not saying that because I believe Obama was a horrible president. I'm saying that because that's the way the Constitution is set up. They want to give up their certain war powers during a time of war temporarily and be able to take them back later. I mean, yeah, that makes sense. Given the situation, that absolutely makes sense. But just to, we're going to give the president these authorities that are constitutionally reserved for us, and we're just never going to take them. No, take them back. You might say I've gone a little bit off the rails, but that's what led us to the events of the 6th. People believed that they were disenfranchised because Trump didn't win. I can't tell you how many times I've heard the term Rhino. Now, I've voted for Republicans. I've voted for Democrats. I'm a registered Democrat. But I've voted for whoever I believed was the best person for the job. If that was a Republican, I'd vote for the Republican. But apparently now, there's a litmus test for the Republicans. Fall absolutely in line with Trump, you're a rhino. You've created your own problem. You've answered your own question why Trump lost. What do you mean? I've never agreed 100% with a governor, or president or senator or representative. Never agreed 100%. And if you're creating this type of litmus test to say how pure of a Republican you are, how many people then voted for Biden against Trump? You're creating this litmus test. Obviously, these people aren't to your standards, so I'll vote for the other guy who's going to be more than willing to be appreciative of my support. I honestly believe people vote very similar ways that I do. They vote for the best person that they believe will do the best job on their behalf. If I have to agree 100% with the Republicans, or I have to agree 100% with the Democrats, I'm not going to vote for either one. If that's the litmus test, guess what? I'm not voting for either one. But what happened on the 6th, I could not believe what I was seeing. I was watching the news and they showed parts of the Trump rally. But it's what happened after that rally that was really, really disturbing. Because instead of everybody just going home, they went to the Capitol. They attempted an insurrection to prevent a constitutionally mandated function of the Congress. And that gallows picture that I showed earlier, people were wanting to hang Pence. I'm no fan of Pence, but you know what? The man certainly does not deserve to be hung. His job and that role by the Constitution is to count the votes. That's it. Go read the Constitution. You can view it online. So you can make the text bigger or smaller so it's easier for you to read, but it's written in English. His role is primarily ceremonial. Because if Pence could have done something, you don't think Al Gore wouldn't have done something? Al Gore was the first president within my lifetime to win the popular vote by over 500,000 votes, but lose the Electoral College. 4 years ago, Hillary Clinton, over 2 million votes, won the popular vote, lost the Electoral College. Would you have advocated for then Vice President Biden to give Electoral College votes to Clinton? Would you have stood? I wouldn't have stood for that. That's not the way our system works. Why would you? Always fraught with fraud. Prove it. I've asked more than a dozen people on Twitter that have said election fraud. That's a real easy 2-word sentence. And I put, I don't understand why you believe that. I've had some very pleasant conversations with these people, but they never did answer that question. Why do you believe it? I still don't know. And I'm not meaning the question in a controversial way. I want to understand why you believe you voted, you went through the process. Why do you, your vote wasn't fraudulent, my vote wasn't fraudulent. Why do you believe that millions of other people fraudulently voted? Why? Based on your experience, did you see fraud? No. Now, I saw the video from Michigan where they had the ballots in suitcases. It's just an easier term. They're a secured box hidden underneath the table. Well, yeah, because no one was in the room. You got to secure the ballots somehow. You just want them sitting out where everybody, well, let's just take them out of the box, set them on the desk, and we're going to go to lunch now. Well, no, you secure them in that box and you put them out of sight. That makes sense to me. Why doesn't that not make sense to you? Or she was scanning him multiple times. There could have been multiple reasons for that, because I'll tell you, on my ballot, when I voted early, but they scanned the ballot before they handed it to me. That activates that ballot. No two ballots are alike in text, but not in identity. So that ballot was in effect assigned to me. And I don't care if they ran that thing 20 times. Guess what? It's going to, as long as it's scanned successfully once, they put it through again, it's going to say, hey, this is already recorded. My best guess, and from what I understand, if one of those ballots that lady was scanning had an irregularity, it doesn't identify exactly which ones, because let's face it, she's putting in a stack like this. How are you going to, because it sucks the whole thing in at once. It's going to kick him back out and say, hey, send him through again. There was a problem. Let's try rescanning. So that's what she did. That's not fraud. Your vote's only going to be counted once. Oh, Dominion voting systems are full of fraud. And the states that were contested did hand counts. Well, what does that mean? Remember when I said there was a little printer that printed out each page for me to review and say, yes, this is correct? That's what they counted. That is counting by hand. So, let's say there was a defect in the Dominion system. As long as you verified that printout, that yes, this is all correct, how is it fraud? Well, it could have switched the votes. Well, then why didn't you say something? Or why didn't you tell it no? Maybe you fat-fingered something. I mean, there you go. I could have, you could fat-finger something. You meant to hit 1 and hit 2. That's entirely possible. In my state, if there's an error, there's a form I fill out to say I meant to hit 1 and I hit 2 or, whatever. And later on, my vote gets corrected. That's the way it works. That's not fraudulent either. And I've had people tell me, absolutely no voter fraud. Okay, there's only one way that you're going to assure everyone that it was absolutely not fraudulent. Get rid of voting altogether. But to make the claim that it's rampant and overwhelming amounts of fraud, Rudy Giuliani gave a statement during that rally. And it went to the effect of, there needs to be an audit. And if they don't find election fraud, then we're fools. But I thought Rudy had all this mountain of evidence. Apparently he didn't. There was one protester said, "Oh, they're not letting us look at the votes." Yeah, it goes back to that Fifth Amendment thing. You don't have a right to look at my vote. You don't. You don't have a right to look at the way I voted. In the end, that's just my opinions. Feel free to let me know how you feel in the comment section down below. Be respectful, because if you're not going to be respectful, it gets flagged by YouTube. I review it. And if I still approve it, then I'm responsible for what you post. And I'm not going to be responsible. We'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.